Review for final. If we have a statement like this, float, get average, and it takes a string, that's just its prototype. That's all we know about it. But what can we tell about it? What is it? What does it return? What data type does it return?
Float.
It returns a float. What is its parameter type? What kind of data is its parameter? These are not actually trick questions. These are easy. What is its parameter? Its parameter is val. What data type is val? It's a string, yeah. Is this a prototype or a function? That's a prototype. I can't type. Okay, so suppose we have some code that looks like this. And suppose that the user types in 1, 2 as their data elements. So let's look at the code. It declares two floats. It says enter two numbers. It uses CIN to read in those two numbers, and then it calculates a total. So if the user types in 1 and 2, what pound sign include should we put up at the top? Yep, we need IOString. Also, since we're not prefacing these with std colon, what using namespace do we need to put up here? If these were changed to ints, would the program work if you typed in 1.0 and 2.0? Let's find out what it does. And 2.0. It breaks. But let's make sure it worked correctly if we did just type in 1 and 2. Okay. So the answer is no, you cannot type in 1.0 and 2.0 if they are declared as ints. If we wanted to accept that kind of stuff, can we enter 1.0 and 2.0? No. Suppose we have an array that looks like this. Int nums is equal to 3, 5, 2, 1. Oh wait, let's use that old song. 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9. If we do this, cout nums 2 followed by a space followed by nums 0, what is it going to print? Yeah, which one of these is element 2? The 7 is, right? Because it starts counting at 0. So that's 0, that's element 1, that's element 2, so it's going to print out a 7, followed by a space, and then what's element 0? The first one. It prints 7a. True or false? Are arrays fixed in size? It's actually true. Once declared, they are fixed in size. Once we have created this nums array, we can't change its size just to tack on one value. You can allocate a new array, though, and reassign it. But we couldn't just find a way to do nums.append, which you can do if you're using an abstract data type called a list or a vector or something like that. But once declared, an array is fixed in size. If you want to increase the size of it, you have to reallocate it. You have to completely recreate it. So arrays are fixed length. They're fixed in size once allocated. To increase the size of the array, you actually have to allocate a new array. What is the syntax for creating an array of ints named values that has 200 elements, that has room for 200 elements? Somebody help me here. We want to make an array of ints. The name of the array is values and it has room for 200 elements. So what would we type?
Values.
Okay, if I type values, that's great, but what is this data type?
Oh.
int, yep. Then we got to do,
190.
we actually wanted to say 200, but you're right. It goes from 0 to 199, but you have to put 200 here or else you won't have room for 200 of them. If you put 201, I'd give you a lot of credit, but if you put in 199, I'd give you a lot of credit, but 200 is correct. Which is a good point. If you reference, or yeah, let's just say, write a few lines of code that would print this array out. Let's use a for loop. For int x is equal to, what's the starting value of an array? 0. While x is less than 200, or the length of it if we had declared it as a constant. X plus plus, cout values at position x. That would be a few lines of code that would print that array out. It'd be smarter if we had declared this as a constant, you know, for reasons we've already discussed. What if I wanted to initialize all the values of this array to 0? How would I do that? There's two ways. One is I could write a loop that would set all the values of that array to 0, and the other is I could use an initializer. So, write a line of code that creates an array of ints called test that has room for 20 or 2,000 ints, and they are all initialized to 0. What would that look like? Well, what's the data type? Int. Okay. What's the array name? Test. What is the array size? 2,000. And what do I do to set them all equal to 0? Equals curly brace 0. Exactly. What is the valid range of values for this? We could begins at what and ends at what? Which are the valid index values? So if we do like test something, is equal to 1, 2, 3, what's the minimum number that we could put here? 0. That'd be the first element. Then what's the number of the last element? Yep. That's the last element. If you're going to declare, yeah, I'll just write this one out. Declare an array of strings called names and initialize the array with the values Bob, Carol, and Joe. Now I don't tell you how many items to put in that array. I kind of imply it here. But since I tell you to initialize it, you can use an initializer list. So what's the data type of this array? String. What's the name of the array? Names. I'm just going to do that because I'm going to use an initializer list. If you put 3, it would work, but we don't have to put 3. Wouldn't be wrong. I'd give you credit for it. All right, if you have these characters, and you have these choices, match them up. What is that? Everybody agree that's not, right?
Yep.
What is that? That's a preprocessor directive. The only one we've used much is # include, and I kind of showed you another one, # define. You know what that one is. We use that one all the time. That's a comment. This is and this is or. Does a preprocessor directive end in a semicolon? If you do this, # include IOString. No semicolon. Note to self, remove question 13. That's right, there is something incredibly important we're going to cover Monday. So don't skip Monday just thinking that, oh, we've already done the exam review, I don't care. We're going to cover something important. Even if it's not on the exam, it's very important.
I should have recorded.
I will. All right, so to write to a file, we need to do a few things. 1, what # include do we use? Yep, we use fstring. 2, what, we haven't even been giving it a name, but what class, what data type do you use? We use ofstring. So to read from a file, what # include do we use? The same one. Right. And although we didn't do it today, we did it Monday. What is the class, the data type of the file? It's a ifstring. why do we use IF stream and OF stream? So that writing and reading from files is as easy as writing to cout and reading from CIN. There are other ways to read from files. There are other classes for doing file access. But fstream is the one that gives you the ability to use the arrows to write to it. Check something, make sure it's in our notes. Okay. Review the use of IF stream in the July 18 notes. There'll be a question and it'll say which of these looks the best. And there'll be a couple of different uses of IF stream. You have to pick the one that's most correct. So if you memorize the code for using an IF stream from the notes, you'll be well off. All right, we know how to use for loops, I hope, by now. Write a for loop that will count from 200 to 400 by 5s. That will count, let's give it a variable, count x. So what's that syntax look like? It's a for loop, so I'm going to put for, and then inside the parentheses, what am I going to put? int x, what am I going to initialize it to?
200.
And then I use semicolons. You use semicolons inside of a for loop. What's the next line?
X less than 400.
I am actually going to make it,
401.
yeah, or less than or equal to 400. I should put inclusive, you know, so that we know that we have to include 400. If you say inclusive, it just means use less than or equal to. And then lastly, what's the third part? We want it to increment by 5s rather than by 1s. Yep, x plus equals 5. So similarly, write a for loop that will count from 10 to 1 by -1. That will count z from 10 to 1 minus 1. What will this one look like?
Or if z equals to x greater than
Yeah,
0.
z is greater than or equal to 1. Yeah, or just greater than 0. That would have worked.
X minus minus.
And then x minus minus. Are we all in agreement? I hope so, because that's correct. No, it's not. Not x minus minus, z minus minus. You probably said x minus.
Yeah.
You probably said whichever. Yeah.
So x.
There we go. Okay, these I'm not going to even type in. I just want you to hear them. Which of these are true about header files? Can more than one CPP file include the same header file?
Yes.
The answer is absolutely yes. That's the reason you create a header file, is to put something that's included by more than one CPP file. True, false. A header file may contain prototypes of functions that are defined in CPP files.
True.
Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
I hope so, because it's true. In our class, we always put the code for the main function inside a header file.
False.
I hope that sounds false, because it is. Where do we put our main? We put it in CPP, not a header file. Note to self, skip question 22. We haven't talked about classes, and so these questions that I'm saying skip are about classes. Did we talk about case statements?
Briefly, a while ago.
Gosh. A case statement is like a mega if statement. It looks like this. See out, enter a number. Oh, we used cases, or at least we could have with that phone number assignment. It's been a while. And then we read that into I. And then we have a switch case. So we switch on the value of I. If I is a 1, we're going to print 1. And then break. If I is a 2, we're going to see out 2, but we're not going to issue a break statement. If I is a 3, we're going to see out 3, and we're going to break. And the default is to print 4. So suppose that's your code. What happens if they type 1? What gets printed out?
1.
Right, because it jumps here, switch I goes to this case, it prints out 1, and then it breaks. What does the break do? It goes there. So it prints out 1. Type. If they type 2, what happens?
Prints 2.
It prints 2, but there's no break, so it also prints 3. And then there is a break, so it stops. That's called fall through. If you don't put a break in there, then it'll just keep running through. Then if they type a 3, what does it print out? Does it fall through? No, because there's a break there. And then if they type in anything else, like a 0, what does it print? 4, because the default is 4. And there doesn't need to be a break because that's the last thing. That's the way a case statement works. And you could put 1,000 different cases in it. Alrighty. There may be a little bit of miscellaneous stuff in it, which will be drawn from the notes from Unit 2. It's not going to be much more. We've already covered like 90% of the exam. So to review any further, come up to Unit 2 notes. Really? That's all we got? Okay. And then review July 6, July 11, and July 18's notes. And you'll be good to go. So give those a once over, and it'll be just like the midterm was. Open book, or if you have the book on Kindle, open Kindle. Open anything that's stored in D2L. Opening Visual Studio and typing in, but you won't have a lot of time if you typed in every single thing that was in the program into Visual Studio just to test it out. Alrighty. If you need to take the exam online because you will not be here next week, send me a text message Friday reminding me. Alrighty? This Friday. And the exam itself is next Wednesday, rather than trying to get into the building on Friday when it won't be open. So,
What time is the exam from on Wednesday?
same time. Same time. So unless you have some weird conflict with another class wanting the exam at the same time, and I don't think anybody does. Okay, so exam is at 7 on Wednesday, 27. All right, guys, let's take roll and then bail.